If you're looking for ways to market your tourist road, museum, or nonprofit more effectively, then you'll want to hear what these folks have to say. All aboard!
In days past, the Roundhouse was where the railroad worker united with the steam locomotive, each to prepare for the journey ahead. Today, it's where we examine the history, the industry, the machines, the hobby, and the passion behind railroading. News, interviews, stories, and more. So climb aboard. This is the Roundhouse.
Welcome to the Roundhouse. I'm your host, Nick Ozarek, and this is episode number 130 of our Trains and Railroad podcast, where we're talking about everything in the industry and the hobby. You name it, and we discuss it. Today, we're having another panel conversation, this time on the subject of marketing, talking about how to market the tourist railroad, the museum, fundraiser. And these are concepts that honestly, in some cases, go beyond just rail preservation and rail tourism. So it's definitely worth hearing from our three experts from their backgrounds of what they have to share. Very excited to get to that. Before we do, though, first, I want to thank those of you who are supporting the Roundhouse podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/the Roundhouse. For as little as $1 a month, you are going to be supporting what we do here on the show. And I want to give a shout out in particular to our two newest members, Rick Rowlands and Ronald Paladin. They are loco fitters, which means they get access to episodes like this a week in advance of their public release. So you'll want to check that out at patreon.com/the Roundhouse. I should also mention, because I don't mention this nearly as much as I should, given that this is kind of part of my business, this is presented to you by Streamliner Media. In case you didn't know, that's my digital multimedia company where I'd be happy to work with you to help your marketing efforts, especially when it comes to video marketing. You can see the work that I've done for clients of mine at streamlinermedia.com. I'd also like to thank the sponsors of today's episode. First, the Strasburg Railroad. Learn more about how their mechanical services department can help with your restoration project by emailing mechanical@strasburgrailroad.com. And Rail and Road Auctions, which specializes in railroad collectibles and memorabilia. You can see what auctions they have coming up at bidrar.com. Our topic today is marketing and advertising in rail preservation, and I'm delighted to be joined by three experts in the subject. First, from Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, Operations Manager Eric Mencis.
Hello, and welcome, everyone.
From Nashville Steam Preservation Society, Communications Manager Joey Bryan.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having us.
And from the Saratoga Corinth and Hudson Railway, owner Hal Raven.
Well, thanks for having us, and look forward to this discussion today.
It should be very fun and very interesting because obviously we're all looking to talk about what we do more effectively. But let's get to know a little bit more about your organizations and what you do with them. So let's start with you, Eric.
Okay, so I'm new to the Western Maryland, but we run trains from Cumberland, Maryland to Frostburg. We're known right now because we have steam locomotive 1309, the old Chesapeake and Ohio 2662. Restored about a year and a half ago back to operation, and it's a big draw for people. A lot of people know the railroad because the old steam locomotive 734, which is waiting to be rebuilt. There are plans for it. They just haven't happened yet, but there are plans for that. And like I said, I'm new to the railroad, and my job now is to take the railroad to the next step. It's grown substantially after COVID under our executive director, Wes Hines, and now it's my job to help him take it to the next level. Working on developing a marketing plan, customer service plan, operation plan, And in reality, to me, marketing is all that combined. Yeah.
Very good. Joey.
Yeah, I'm Joey Bryan. I am the communications manager for the Nashville Steam Preservation Society. I also serve on the board of directors as the secretary. Nashville Steam is restoring Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway number 576, a kind of a pocket-sized 484 locomotive. It was built in 1942 by the American Locomotive Company. Served the railroad for about 10 years, and then it was removed from service. And it was selected to be donated to the city of Nashville, put on display in the Centennial Park. Sat there for about 60 plus years, and then we formed in 2015 and approached the Parks Department and the City Council with a plan to restore the locomotive to operation. We moved the locomotive out of the park in 2019 and been working on it ever since. So we're a little unique with the other two guys here, as we don't really have a service yet that we can market. It's mostly all about fundraising to get the locomotive back steaming again. Actually, today we just launched the Last Mile campaign, and that is a $350,000 campaign to what we hope to finish off the restoration of the locomotive. That's what we've anticipated the remaining cost to be. And so if we can raise that money over a continuous regular span, then we anticipate locomotive 576 will be up and steaming in about 3 years. So yeah, that's us.
Very good. And Hal?
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Hal Raven, the owner and general manager of the Saratoga Corinth Hudson Railway. We operate 17 miles of track on the former D&H's Adirondack branch here in the Adirondacks between Saratoga Springs and Corinth, New York. It's a pretty historic line. It's very scenic and beautiful up here, and we have some unique vintage equipment. We had the opportunity a few years ago to save Alco 5, the Alco plant switcher, 660 horsepower S1. That was the original plant switcher at the Alco plant in Schenectady. So most locomotives, when they were built, they were moved around or hauled by 5 at one point. So she was pretty rough shape, but we did a lot to get her up and going, and working on the restoration of that all the time. And we have a 1943 S2 that was U.S. Army. That's painted in Delaware and Hudson scheme, along with some vintage coaches, 1916 Pullman, and some other unique pieces we're going to be adding real soon. But it's a real neat line up here, and we had the opportunity to get this up and going. A lot of support from the community and other railroads, other short lines, great volunteers, great staff, and really a lot of family and friends that made this happen. But we had a real great, successful season last season, and we're ready to launch into the new year here.
All of that sounds very good. A good place as any to start this conversation is with this question from Billy Brown. Who do you see as your target market / ideal customer for your marketing efforts? Let's start with you, Joey.
Excuse me. Well, at this point, it's pretty much, anyone and everyone willing to donate to get a steam locomotive back in operation. So I think when we first started, our core was, of course, kind of the rail fan community. But it was really kind of interesting because 576 is really an underappreciated steam locomotive from a relatively unknown railroad like the NC and St. L, unless you were around the Southeast. You just really don't know a whole lot about it. It merged with L&N in 57. So there's the first part of what we started this whole thing was to really tell the story of both the locomotive and the NC and St. L, just to kind of get that whole aspect out there. So while doing that, we really pitched to both the rail fan community and the local Nashville community. Because a bunch of people have been to the park in Nashville, seen the engine, but had no idea of its relevance or why it was even there. Because why it was placed there in that particular spot in the park is just beyond the tree line back in the day was the Roundhouse and shop complex for the NC and St. L. But those were raised in the late 50s after the merger. So then you no longer had that context of why that locomotive was even there. So you really had to kind of tell the story from the beginning to really start to gain that overall market. And now we have a great following that we really reach out to whenever we have a certain project that we need help with, and they have been absolutely outstanding in helping this endeavor from the beginning.
So here at Western Maryland, if you have money, we see you as a target, basically is how we look at things. But not everyone is a target for the same train. Probably years ago, I don't know much about the pre-COVID history of the railroad, but I get the gist that it was just run trains up to Frostburg and back and just put people on those trains, take them for the ride, bring them back after a few hours. Now our market is somewhat different, where springtime we'll have our Spring Fling kids event trains that don't even go all the way to Frostburg. We'll have ice cream trains every other Friday in the summer. Those don't go all the way to Frostburg. Every other Friday, opposite of the ice cream trains, we have our Moonlight on the Mountain, which is live music, drinks, and appetizers. And then we put a different spin on that in the fall and actually don't go all the way to Frostburg, but drop people off about 3/4 of the way up, and where we will have fire pits and live music off the train. And so they'll spend a few hours in the mountains, and we're going to call that the Fireside Fireball. The name plays into the marketing aspect of all that too. And then we have our murder mystery trains, which are geared towards one crowd. And now we're going to launch in the next few days our Allegheny Mountain Dinner Train, which will be more towards a higher end crowd, or a 3-course meal dinner on the train, but not the murder mystery aspect, more of a higher class target market. So we gear trains towards families. We gear trains towards everyday people, like a regular ride up the mountain and back. Younger crowds for the Fireside trains or the Moonlight trains, where you got live music and drinks and cocktails. And then you have higher end crowds for the Allegheny Mountain Dinner Train, and more average dinner crowd for the murder mystery, all going on at once on the same railroad, on the same train cars, essentially.
So targeting, crowd is unique, and it is a challenge to find what works best. But one of the things that we wanted to strive for here was not to exclude anyone. You have a lot of rail fans that want to come out. A lot of them just want to chase the train. We try to have historical days, photo ops, ways that folks can ride the train, do photo run-bys, do things like that, so they can get their pictures at the same time. But really, it's families. It's younger crowds, older crowds. You really have to cater to all of it, and you have to make an experience or a ride that everybody wants to do. It doesn't have to be at the same time, but you have to find something that is going to capture the attention of folks and want them to come out and do it. A lot of these folks that come out, take a train ride, they'll tell you that this is the first time I've ever been on a train, which is kind of, unique to hear. You don't really think about it. And then, you talk about the history, we talk about the locomotive, and it's amazing how people say, oh, my grandfather worked at Alco, or my dad worked at Alco, or things of that nature. And they never thought anything about it, or had no idea there were still Alco locomotives even out there running. The kids, really just getting the kids out here, and, that first experience for them to be behind a vintage diesel, or to go up in the cab, or, join us for a cab ride, stuff they don't forget, to have a birthday party in a caboose, it's outside of the norm. And people are always looking for unique experiences. And today, it's not about a train ride anymore. It's about creating a unique experience, and the train ride is secondary. People have to go home and say, that was the coolest thing I've done this week, or the coolest thing we did on our vacation. And you have to find a way to get all of the different groups out there. And like Eric said, a number of different types of trains and events. We have our Friday night pizza night, and that alternates Friday nights with our Sunset Limited. And that's more of the adult, the wine and charcuteries and things like that. And then our Sunday ice cream trains, our Easter Bunny Express, our Candy Cane Express, and our Christmas Tree Limited, which we ran this year, which was really awesome, where folks could go down, pick their Christmas tree, our crew would load it onto a flat car and then bring it back. And it's creating an experience, and people want to come back because they're like, oh, this is a family tradition. We're going to do this every year. The idea of taking a train and bringing your Christmas tree home on it is like blows their mind. And they're just like, oh, this is our new family tradition. We got an ornament for our tree. We got our, we brought our tree home. We took a train ride. It was an awesome Sunday. So just creating these unique experiences is really what's important. And you have to target all of those crowds and audiences, from the young that are just coming out for their first train ride or their birthday party, to a retirement, or, what bachelorette party is now, or things like that, corporate dinners, events, just families looking for an afternoon ride. And it's not always about a long train ride. It's just folks that are looking for something to do, and it's not going to tie up their whole day. So we really look to try to target everyone and get as many people here without excluding them, and also being price friendly. Today it's tough. You got to watch. A lot of families don't have the money to go out and do an event. And if you can have a number of different events that that are in different price ranges that everybody can be a part of, it really helps in the end.
That is definitely true. Bill Didden asks, what have been the most effective methods of marketing? Eric, we'll start with you.
For me, it's been social media. If anyone knows my past, I was the one that put Dirt the Cat to fame at the Nevada Northern. And everyone saw the reaction to the world when he passed away about a month ago. Rest in peace, Dirt. Miss you. But, that was the biggest tool, is social media, and being on top of it. Right now, in the last week, Western Maryland has reached about 150,000 people in a week through our social media. And the biggest thing was Instagram reels of the train, the steam engine coming out of the tunnel, or a reel I took about 200 feet into the tunnel as the steam engine entered. I shot some video, and we get about 100 new followers on Instagram a day right now, as that reel keeps getting shared and shared, and it is popular. And so do not ignore the social media aspect, and do not ignore the new changes and what's added to social media. But don't ignore the print ads, don't ignore TV ads, local publications, your travel publications of your area, local tourism stuff. You got to have a good combination of it all, but you got to play with what's current and what's happening and where people look.
So, like Eric said, definitely social media. That's where you get the most bang for your buck. And it's easy to get things out. It's easy to get updates out there for certain trains or events. It's easy to promote things, target your audience, and, make changes on the fly. So that's really, Facebook and Instagram have been by far the most effective way for us to do our own in-house marketing. But definitely our local Chamber of Commerce. We're a member of about 4 or 5 different chambers, and that's huge. When you're a part of the community and you're supporting chambers and things like that, and just going out and going to the mixers and mingling and going to social events where you're meeting corporate folks that are looking for something to do. People that are like, we're getting married. Can we do a wedding on the train? Absolutely. That mingling and really being out there in the community and is a big part of it, as well as the local publications. We put a lot into the travel guides here, because they're in every hotel. Every person that comes in and stays at a hotel, they pick up that travel guide that's laying on the countertop and looks through it to see what there is to do. And if you have a great picture in there and saying, hey, this is what we are, this is what we do, we're real close, come visit us, people are like, oh, let's do this. And certainly your rack cards, we go out and put those out, and I can't tell you how many people said, oh, we picked up one of the flyers. We picked up one of the flyers in our hotel. We make a pretty hard push to go out and hit all of the local businesses, whether it's shops in town or hotels. Meet the general manager, meet the concierge, hand out our rack cards, give them some free passes to the train, say, hey, come check this out. And if you can get the person at the front desk to come out for a ride, give them a couple passes, and have them go back and say, that was the coolest thing I've done, they're going to tell every guest about it. So that part of it's huge. So that face-to-face connection in local networking really is a big part of getting the tourism to come in. And you have to kind of roll with all those items all through the season, and it can be a lot. It gets to be tough throughout the year when you're in the middle of the grind and it's July and August, and you're just trying to keep trains running and everything else. But that part of it's pretty key.
In our experience so far, it really kind of depends on what you're trying to communicate. I mean, 'cause that's what the base of marketing is communicating and essentially kind of telling a story. So you have to figure out what you're trying to tell, what's the main takeaway point, and what you want your audience to do with that information. So for just general kind of progress updates, social media, as they've mentioned, is by far the best way to get your message out quick and just kind of show, here's what we've done, here's what we've accomplished. But in my experience for fundraising, it still just goes back to good old fashioned emails and mailings, because that is your really true targeted audience of, they want to, receive that information directly to their computer so they can be updated on a regular basis and not just when they check Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. So for fundraising efforts, that's been absolutely, I think, key to our overall success so far, is to both email when we're doing certain fundraising projects, but also follow up, this is how much we've raised, and then when that project is done, here's what that money led to, and this is now a completed component of the locomotive that is now ready to go and be reinstalled once we reach that point of reassembly. And Eric, just to let you know, we are hoping to be the first railroad organization with a shop raccoon. So.
Well, good luck with that one. I will definitely follow that.
Just kidding for all the animal people out there. We do love raccoons here in Tennessee.
But like Joey said, the emailing is definitely a big part of it too. And now with all these booking platforms that you have, it's really easy to capture your audience and who came on what trains and have their email addresses in there, and through the MailChimp and ways to get mailers out, and really keeping folks updated, because if they came and they liked the wine train, then maybe they're going to like this train. And if you can just say, and our goal is we don't want to pester people. I hate getting all those, emails and mailing lists of things, but just getting something out there that says, hey, these are all the events we have going on. Take a quick look, make it real short and simple so people can look at it, have an idea of what's going on, what's new this year, what's different than the train ride they took last year. Giving them a reason to come back is a big part of it.
A little other thing, a lot of this question, in all reality, this question should have been phrased in some ways, what's your most successful advertising is kind of what we mentioned. But really, marketing and advertising are not the same thing. Marketing is everything you do. Advertising is just how you get people to experience the marketing, at least on my side experiences. To me, marketing goes how you present them on Facebook and bring them in. And with Dirt, for instance, Dirt wasn't just a cute cat. He was a rugged, dirty cat that fit the railroad. His voice and his story fit the experience you got at the Nevada Northern. The drive to Ely, if he fit that experience, he fit the ruggedness of the territory, the dirtiness of being able to walk through the engine shop and touch a steam locomotive that's been in that shop for 100 years. The experience of what was told on the train by the narration crews and the crews just by talking to them, what then personified in the gift shop. I've seen a few people try to copy with the cat thing and all that too. And I've even done it at other places because everyone's like, well, we have a shop cat. Can you make him famous too? And I'll do it just for the fun of it now. It's more just for the fun and entertainment on my side of things too. But in reality, it's the story is marketing. What is your railroad story? How does it relate to what the customer sees online, gets at your experience, and walks away with? Here in Western Maryland, our trains now using like streamlined era coaches, dining cars, lounge cars, dome cars are nicer than anything the Western Maryland ever had back in the day. Western Maryland was pretty much a coal hauling railroad. And so the marketing plan that's still in its infant stages is we are an old coal hauler of the Allegheny Mountains turned into this nice, cool, modern day streamlined era train that you can now ride on, experience, but still have the old flavor of the area. And so we are working on that where everyone's like, well, we started off hauling coal out of these hills. The coal stopped, the train almost went away. We turned it into a scenic ride. And now we're this really cool, you can have dinner on board, you could do this. And the engineers know the story, the conductors know the story, everyone plays a part of the story. And so when someone comes and visits, they get the whole story. So you can be successful on Facebook, but if you're not telling the whole story how it is, it might not go anywhere. You might be good at telling the story in your own little world, but if you're not good at telling it on Facebook, then your marketing might not go anywhere. It all has to go together to really be successful in any given way.
Yeah, and like about your story, that is a huge part of it. You do your advertising, your marketing, you get people to come. You now have them for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours to tell them your story. And you have to convey in that time why you're unique, why the railroad is important, why it's important that it continues to survive and exist. Why should there be a train ride here? Why should people come back? What's interesting or different about this? Did they, was it a value to them? Did they get their money's worth? Is it something that they would want to come back and do again? Would they want to ride another one of your trains? And a huge part of that is your presence, your branding, your staff, the experience they have. Like I said, it's about creating an experience. And if you can't create that experience and make those people, smiling and walking off saying how great of a time they had, your advertising is not going to do anything for you because they're not going to come back. So once you get them there, that's the most important thing, is making them leave feeling like this was the best thing that they've done. And you have a very limited window. So it's critical to have the staff. And we're very fortunate that we have awesome staff and volunteers that really just go out of their way to make people feel like this is the best day of their life. And that's a huge part of it, because once you've made that experience, that's word of mouth is a huge part of people coming back, or they told their family or their sisters or their family that was in town on a vacation, oh, we got to go do the train ride. It's going to be awesome. So word of mouth and getting that story out there is huge.
Yeah, you touched on it there with branding. I'm so glad that branding came up. And branding could probably be an episode in and of itself. I think a lot of times people think of representing their organizations in terms of this is what we do. We do a train ride. We are doing a restoration. But when you're exploring the topic of what is the story here, as you said, Eric, what is the texture of this place? What is the feel of this place? What is the atmosphere? And that's defined by the history of it. That's defined by the people that make it up, past and present. And that's defined by the physical landscape that you operate in. And you take all these pieces and you figure out this is our brand. And then it's how you communicate that. And it comes across through everything from your advertising to your rider experience to even your shop culture. There's so many ways in which it can pollinate these other elements of operation that I think people tend to overlook branding because they think, well, it's just a logo, or it's a piece of marketing. It could go well beyond that. It could be so much more powerful if you tap into that.
Absolutely. And I think, we try to make sure our logo is on everything, whether it's wine glasses, apparel, things like that. And we wear our stuff all the time. And it's amazing how many people will see, your brand on something or your social media and then pick it out of a crowd. I was in New Jersey last week at a Devils game, And I had a gentleman come up to me. He saw my SCH hat, and he was like, "Oh, he's like, that's the railroad." He's like, "I'm going to go do that this summer. We follow you on Facebook." I mean, what are the chances? You're at an arena with thousands of people, and some guy sees your logo and knows exactly what it is, and is like, "We're going to do that this summer." So your brand is huge, because that's your image. And we wear stuff all the time, and every time we go to a railroad, a neighboring railroad or somewhere, we make sure we pick something up with their brand on it to wear it, because it's critically important to be able to show that type of stuff. I mean, I got my 576 hat right here. Wear it all the time.
And we appreciate that.
The Strasburg Railroad is an institution in the heritage railroad industry, and its mechanical services department is proud to lead the way. With the knowledge and experience that has created one of the most reliable steam railroading experiences in the country, the Strasburg Railroad is excited to offer their expertise to the rest of the industry. Strasburg's professional team provides consulting and technical assistance to take your steam locomotive or railcar project from idea to finished product. They stand behind their work and always strive to meet their customers' needs for quality, historic accuracy, and reliability at a price that is fair. Unlike many competitors, they feature a fully equipped boiler, rail car, and machine shop, so the work gets done in-house, helping you to get more for your money. Send your inquiries to mechanical@strasburgrailroad.com and let the professionals get to work for you. Philip Bush-Deeker asks a really good question here. What are some good ways to convince members of a group that marketing is a worthwhile effort when said members either believe that previous attempts have failed to yield results or don't perceive a need for marketing in general? Joey, let's start with you.
Well, we've been very fortunate that I feel like our whole organization really understands the importance of marketing. We're a pretty diverse age group, so it's not like, and also we're a relatively young organization. So we have that ability to start correctly, learning from both the achievements and the mistakes of other groups, and, kind of plotting our own path through that. Now, of course, at the same time, we are extremely careful about how much expenditures we put towards marketing, because every dollar that goes to marketing is a dollar away from going towards the mechanical aspect of the restoration. But again, you need that marketing to bring in more dollars for the restoration. So it's definitely give and take. But fortunately, we've had such success in the various efforts that we've done that so far, no one, within the organization has said, "Hey, you're doing a bad job." So I'll just keep going with what we're doing.
Yeah, so same thing. We're very careful with the money we spend. You have X amount of dollars allocated, and it's got to be productive. It's got to have the right goals. And a lot of places spend a fortune on advertising, and sure, it may work, it may not work if you don't do it right and you don't use the right channels. But we're very careful with the resources we allocate, and we put a lot of effort into going to local businesses and really, using local businesses to advertise with us and for us, incorporating their product, incorporating their business. It can't be just about us. It has to be about including the local pizza shop, including the local ice cream place, using local businesses, the hardware store down the street, incorporating all of them into your advertising and marketing so that you can tag them in posts and say, hey, it's, these are all the things we're doing, but we're getting all of our supplies from this hardware store down the street, and really those shout outs to other businesses and making them be a part of the team effort. I think that's a huge part of it.
So the way I view it, and some of this is personal experiences, because I've been at places too that didn't value marketing, or they just spent hours in meetings of what should we paint on a train, or what's historical, or how should we run the train. and no one wanted to talk about the experience or the people wanting to come in and things of that nature. And the way I put it, if you're in the management level of a museum or an organization and someone's not talking marketing, then you're really probably just playing trains. You're a group that's just kind of there to want to play trains and not bring the people in. If you are a group that's focused on at least bringing people in or have one person focused, and again, you got to do it carefully of what money can you focus on it. If you can pay someone to do it full time or have the money to do Facebook boosting full time, that's great. If you don't, what can you do for free? At least someone working on it, free, volunteering, doing something. You need that in every group because that is also your fundraising. Fundraising is also marketing and part of the story you have to tell. And so if someone says we don't need to market, they just want to be in that group to play with the trains more than actually run it like a business and market it and do the projects you need to do and fundraise for them and all that nature. And I guess it can go with, depending on what you offer. If you're a smaller museum with not much of a ride, you got to find your voice to market it that way and what it is. If you're more of a scenic ride, you got to find your voice to market it that way. But you have to do something because people don't just show up. They have to see you someplace before they just do it, or they have to hear about you from someone else who did it. And Facebook and social media and all that is a giant platform for word of mouth. And so word of mouth is still really the biggest way of advertising and marketing.
Yeah, and to bounce off that really quick, I think I would encourage people not to be afraid to spend money on marketing. Because, if you do it correctly, then it does yield incredible results. Also, don't be afraid to bring in outside people either. Because I work an 8 to 5 job. This is my 6 to 10 volunteer gig after I come home and change clothes. But we've hired FMW Solutions, primarily for the specialty mechanical contracting services. But we've also contracted them for marketing as well as digital media, because I am not an expert on photography. I'm not an expert. I don't have the equipment needed to get all that 4K UHD glory that is out there now. So by using their services, that takes a whole load off of me and my fellow volunteers, but getting the ideal result to help push that message.
And the other thing too is incorporating your fan clubs in there. You can do a lot with your advertising and stuff where people just they get some great footage and they send them like, oh, hey, I took this video today, or we sent you these pictures if you'd like to use them. And then people just they love seeing their stuff up there. They love saying oh, they used our video in their promotion, or they used our photos. So giving folks shout outs and using material that comes from your ridership is a big deal, and that helps a long ways. And a lot of times we're big fans of bartering and trading. We go to local businesses or places and hey, it may be X amount of dollars for this big print ad, but you know what, well hey, we'll do a private car for your business or something and trade. So we do a lot of stuff in trade that a lot of people don't think of, and there's a lot to be said for that still today with bartering and trade. So stuff like that works real good, but you got to be creative, and you have to pay attention to what you spend and do it creatively and find out what's going to be the most bang for the buck. But you can't exclude your local audiences too, and just finding ways to get out there to your local folks.
Continuing on this theme of the challenges that we face, Jacob Massey asks, are there any parts of rail preservation that ever come off as challenging to try and properly advertise? And I'm going to expand on that and say, for whatever challenges you've faced in trying to market a specific aspect of what you've done, how have you overcome those challenges? And we'll start with you, Eric.
it is challenging in some ways. With social media today, if I post a picture of 1309 making a huge black plume of smoke, it actually gets more of a negative effect. Some of it's good, but if it's making tons of black smoke, I have to spend half my day hiding comments on Instagram because you never know who's going to see it or share it. Just the 10 minutes ago before all this started, there's a video going around on the internet of a lady in California complaining about tank cars being parked on a siding, especially after all the stuff happened in Ohio. Like there's the meme that goes, everyone in the world became a railroad expert overnight after all that. And that all creates challenges for us because the way I see it is the tourist railroads are the public image of railroading because we're the most direct experience through museums and historical preservation to really what the big railroads do. And so if people look at them negatively, they look at us negatively. So I do screen and be very careful with what I post or what I don't post video-wise. And tell you the truth, in Nevada and here, we've done several photo runs. And while it looks great for photography, some of the crew, even though it doesn't always happen the way we like, but we've asked, photographers of if you have requests that you want a lot of smoke, don't expect us to put a huge black cloud into the sky because we have to be mindful of our neighbors. We have to be mindful of the people around us. And we don't want that image going out into the public anymore. That is the modern day steam railroading. And you got to look at it that way. Here, one of the challenging things we have is Helmstedter's Curve, the famous curve at the Red Barn, where hundreds of railroad photography shots have been taken for 100 years now. We have to limit run-bys and photo charters. Back in the day, the Western Maryland would do photo trains and do 20, 25 run-bys on that one curve with a grade crossing right in the middle of it and didn't care what the neighbors or any of them thought. Well, part of your marketing is knowing what the neighbors and everyone around you thinks of you. And so I am like, well, on any future photo charter, we can stop there multiple times, but we can only do 3 runs per stop. And then we have to move on to a new location and we could come back in the afternoon or something. Stuff like that is all part of your marketing and stuff you have to be conscious of in the modern day world of how you present all of what you do, but make sure it comes off in a positive way because some of these things could be taken in a negative way. If you have equipment that dates back to the Civil War, how do people look on the Civil War and all that and that story nowadays? You got to just be conscious of it and figure out how you want to approach it. And it's a delicate balance. Not always does it come across the way you expect it, but it is a delicate balance. Even with my experience with dirt, we were always putting up with having to tell and reinforce the story that he was a well taken care of cat and loved, and probably the most spoiled cat in the world as 7 bags of cat treats would show up daily. But the image of it, at first shocked people. And the challenge was getting the story across enough times. And if you have to type the same thing into a Facebook comment, you got to type the same thing over and over and over. It's kind of like all of our steam railroads where someone goes, is that a real steam engine? Yeah, it gets annoying to get asked that 20 times a day, but you got to do it with a smile every time and you can't get annoyed. And you got to just do it, and because that's part of your story and part of the show you put on.
Yeah, we're not operational just yet, but I'm already pre-drafting those responses about the smoke wafting through downtown Nashville as we arrive or depart for an excursion. I think as kind of you touched on it, potentially Civil War equipment and how that's all looked at through modern day lenses. The NC and St. L, all their slogans, basically their whole advertising campaign was to put the word Dixie somewhere in their slogans. So, and most their, trains were called Dixie, something, Dixie Flyer, Dixie Limited, Dixie Express, Dixie Flagler, that all came through Nashville. And they named this class, this 484 class of locomotives, the Dixie class, to not call it a Northern class. So that kind of just tells you what the mindset still was, in the 30s and 40s when the 484s first emerged on the rail line. And that's something that, it's really a story that needs to be told, because, of how vital it is, both, with this region and the industry. But I mean, the NC and St. L also at the same time was the first to both kind of establish a promotional. Well, they first saw the Civil War battlefields as tourism locations, and to both interpret their history and say you can the line from Chattanooga to Atlanta they called the battlefield route, because there's so many skirmishes and battles that happened along that key rail line back in the 1860s. So that kind of goes to today. The J3 specifically were referred to mainly by the crews and the employees of the railroad as either yellow jackets. The first 10 had that broader yellow striping, the bullet nose, and the more streamlined appearance. And the second 10 were called stripes or yellow stripes. And so that's kind of what we've adopted, within the organization, is to really promote how the employees viewed the locomotives, what they refer to them as. So I think it's really, you can't not tell the story. You don't want to ignore or hide any history, because it's all valuable and all needs to be told. But you can also see it through a modern day lens and know, what this is the approach that we in 2023 need to take, and how to interpret, this history that is so rich in this area.
Yeah, it is hard. You have to be, like they both said, you have to be very mindful about what you post and how it's viewed, if it's going to be viewed negatively or positively, because you can have anything will be viewed different ways. Same thing. We have to be very mindful and respectful of our community, our neighbors. We don't want, it's cold here and it's hard trying to keep these diesels, warm, and especially running in the winter months. So we don't want them, we don't want to let them sit here idling next to our neighbors. So we put boiler systems in this year and things of that nature to keep the engines warm, so we don't have to idle the engines. We try not to use the whistle and horn a lot here in town or around, neighbor houses where we're in and out all day, so that you can have those good community relations, because that's real and important. About the exhaust, you get a lot of people that come to see these Alcos and they're like, oh, make them smoke. I'm like, sorry, they don't smoke. We put a lot of money and a lot of time and effort into these so that they run properly and they don't smoke. And that's good. Last thing you want is, people getting belched out with smoke. And, while the rail fans might like it, the neighbors aren't going to like it, or the guests on the flat car that don't know that that's what Algos were, known for, getting, oily smoke, waffling through the dining car and on the open air car. So, we take all those things into consideration, and just cosmetics, how people view the train because of how it looks, how things are painted. We want to have, our brand image, but it's also important to try to keep things historically accurate. So we try to, we have to find a happy medium that's going to keep things accurate as far as photos and the representation of, 5 being, back to her original 1947 scheme. So we try to do things that, aren't permanent or magnets, so that we can, be able to vary things up for photo charters and things and not completely alter, the locomotive. But you have to be very mindful of how you paint things and what things you do and how things are viewed, just in general, and the perception of the railroad and what it does for the community. So definitely challenges that are tough to overcome, because sometimes you're thinking you're doing something great and it's viewed completely differently.
This episode of the Roundhouse is brought to you by Rail and Road Auctions. You can find all types of railroad collectibles, including signs, signals, horns, locks, keys, lanterns, timetables, passes, and more. With opening bids of only $10 on many lots, you'll be sure to find something to add to your collection or train room. Rail and Road also offers fast and easy shipping right to your doorstep, and they combine multiple live and online sales methods to allow you a variety of purchasing options. And you can view the full catalog now at www.bidrar.com. That's bidrar.com. Rail and Road Auctions, where real railroaders and rail fans build their collections. Nick Martin asks, we've all seen the high rates of success your pages have had with engagement, but that's just one piece in any marketing campaign. What strategies do you employ to convert those likes and follows into donations and ticket sales, or is there a certain amount of luck involved? And we'll start with you, Joey.
Yeah, Facebook is one of those great mysteries of the universe that no matter how much time I spend on it, it will always be a new adventure every time I log on, and they change something that worked perfectly fine the day before. But yeah, I mean, engagement is really key, not just to, rail preservation groups, but nonprofit groups, just to keep that engagement, that communication going both ways, because you want both, likes, shares, but also comments, because the more likes, comments, shares you get, that changes the algorithm. So the more it's shared out to your entire audience. But that's great for engagement, but what that doesn't really help the overall cause, depending on what that cause is. And I think really one of the prime examples of that is the Facebook fundraiser, because I've seen groups, and we've done it occasionally. It's not really something I prefer to do. But you'll have a post about, help us raise X amount of dollars for X, Y, and Z project. And the goal is, let's just say $1,500. And, you get a lot of engagement. You get, a lot of likes, a lot of comments like, way to go, guys. Hey, good work. Great. But then after 10 hours, you only raised $30. So, the engagement, the perception is great. But then when you see how little people are giving, that's not going to that's not going to lead to other people to give. So you always, in my opinion, with whatever you do, want to lead people back to your website, because your website is really key to your whole endeavor. Because that's what, most people, there are some, factions out there, people that don't necessarily trust social media or certain social media sites. But the website, is your website. You control everything about it for the most part. So you want to get people back to the website and have the same amount of info and updates there, which is for me much more difficult, because it's a lot easier to update Facebook than it is to update your website. But I think that's really key, is to turn that person, who just liked a post on Facebook into a potential donor by getting them to your website and to a place where they feel secure that their funds are going to a safe, secure place.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely important. Like you said, converting it to the website and getting them to look. They may see your post and it may, generate enough interest for them to take a look at the website. They may not want to ride that particular train, but then they say, oh, you have a dinner train, or, oh, this train goes to the winery. That I'm definitely interested in. So, once you get them there, making it user friendly. I've seen a lot of railroads that you look on their website and I look at it and I'm like, this is a mess. I don't even know what train I want to book because I can't even find it. So you got to have things up front, up centered, what your featured trains are, your featured events, capture their attention. These people are going to click, they're going to take a look for a couple seconds. And if they don't see what they're looking for, they're not going to book it. So you got to make it so that it's real easy for them to find what you have. This is who we are. This is what we offer. We have a train for everyone. So that's, a big part of it. And part of it is luck. I mean, you'll put a really great post out there that you think is going to like slam it off the shelf. And you're like, oh, people are going to love this. And then it'll have, you know, a ton of shares and a bunch of comments, but yet we don't have any bookings. And, you know, you're like, well, how does that work out? You know, we just posted this and it's got 90 shares already, but no bookings. People also wait till the last minute. They'll see it. They'll be like, oh, this looks fun. They'll tell their friends and they won't think anything of it. And, you know, you got to be careful on how far and, you know, long you post things in advance. You put it too far in advance, people forget about it. You put it too close to the event, they already have other plans. So you got to find that happy medium of when to get events and things out there. But yeah, you never know. I mean, people wait to the last minute. They'll see it and we won't have a ton of bookings. And then it's 6 hours before train departure and everything's sold out and the phone's ringing off the hook and everybody wants a ticket, you know, because it's a sunny, beautiful day and, you know, or it's not snowing or things like that. So people wait a lot to the last minute. We've definitely noticed that is that, you know, people will kind of really wait to the day of an event to see what's going on, see how their plans change. You know, if something else changes, they may like, oh, let's go do the train ride. So it varies, you know, and you got to kind of anticipate that because as much as you could try to plan for it, it seems like you can never plan really well for when people are going to book because it varies.
So to go off that, you know, every place I've worked and we're working on getting the process here at Western Maryland is by the time Polar Express sells or is happening, we want our entire schedule for 2024 at least up on the ticket website. That doesn't mean we're going to advertise it right away, but we'll work on finding, maybe throw a little feeler post out there and work on finding that happy medium spot. But you got to have your ducks in a row to begin with. You got to know what you're doing that year to start advertising for it. And so we're going to try to have our 2024 schedule up by Thanksgiving. So come January, we can put little feelers out to see who wants to pre-book a dinner train or how far in advance are people going to book the fall color rush, the busiest time outside of Christmas for us. And so we'll have it all going. And then when we find that happy spot, marketing and advertising, how many times do you see McDonald's ads? How many times do you see any ad? You know, it's not just once, it's a few times, and you got to do it over and over and over. I used to try to explain it to people as you got to do it like 3 times a day, 3 times a week at least, and 3 different ways when you think about it. 3 times a day doesn't have to be the same thing, but you got to have something up happening constantly and always refreshing, always doing something. Not that it always works out that way, but it gets the point across that you can't just do once a week and then forget about it for a week and a half. You got to do it consistently, at least once a day or something like that. And that's where it's great when you can pre-schedule stuff. Turning it into people that actually come visit. Dirt's a great example of the behind the scenes, and what a lot of people don't realize is while I was doing all the dirt things in the Nevada Northern, people would go to the website and Facebook because everything had a link. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to buy anything. They were just curious, or if anything, they were buying dirt merchandise because that was real popular. But what was happening in all the algorithms on the back end of things is the more people that just went to go screw around on the website and never buy anything just because we posted dirt, played with the Google algorithm. And so all of a sudden, the railroad's in the New York Times for its star trains. And those are the most popular trains on the Nevada Northern right now is the stargazing trains. To the point, I had to come up with a second version of them because we couldn't get the National Park telescope rangers out every day. And what happened was the Google algorithm saw so many people visiting our website because of dirt, it pushed our website up in higher searches for things going, I want astronomy events. Well, because the website as a whole, and they're not looking for train rides now, that played into the Google algorithm to up something else. And now all of a sudden the Star Trains were featured in the New York Times back there. And now they can sell those out 2 years in advance. You try to get tickets, one of those, you're extremely lucky. And so likes, follows, and all that, and website links are all very important because they all boost something. So you do want to post stuff that probably will get a lot of attention and be like, yes, this is doing well. But if you don't have your website attached from that, you're not doing anything. But if people are at least clicking the link, you never know what it's doing in the back end of the internet world that probably none of us understand. As I say, no one knows what Facebook's going to do except Mark Zuckerberg, and he does it when he likes without telling anyone. But you're ready for something like that. The other thing is I don't see a lot of places put any call to actually take action in the marketing. They're just kind of like, oh, look, our train's running. And we got to be like, do you want to experience this? You got to have some mystique and magic to it. And then you got to have them take action. A good example of take action in Nevada was COVID shut everything down. Remember that part of the time, that March when COVID shut down? Because dirt was so popular, the mystique was dirt needs your help. And the call to action was dirt needs your help. We are shut down. We have no money coming in. We will have to lay off the staff, but you can help by buying merchandise. And because there was a call to action and the mystique and the story and, oh my God, a problem, and I can help solve it, we actually paid the staff for about 2 months off of selling dirt merchandise. And didn't have to lay anyone off at the railroad until the payroll, all the like protection loans and all that came in. We were actually able to keep everyone employed and working because the call to actions and all that. Hey, we expect to be open by this time. We hear things are going to be open for this time. Why don't you book your train tickets or Star Train tickets now and have them ready so you don't miss out once everything does go back to normal. Here, I have had several groups book our dome car out for the fall already. The whole car is sold for at least 3 or 4 days in the fall. Our recent post was to the public was, hey, the dome car is the best seats in the house. We do have a few days that it's already selling out. Book your tickets ahead so you don't miss out this October when we do the fall colors. And there was a call to action and some mystique, played into the post, a picture of it, but not quite seeing the full scenery, but just enough to be like, ooh, I wonder what that looks like. And then, we did see quite a few dome car tickets come in for October already, just because there was a call in this. And it goes with anything. You got to play with a little bit of everything and have a hook to get people interested. But there is a little bit of luck all involved too. I will say that because you never know what's going to be the next popular thing. You could do the same video one day here, and then you could repost it a year and a half later because you're like, no one watched that, everyone forgot it, but it's a cool video, and all of a sudden it has 1 million views. There is some luck to it, but there is some ways to get the luck to work in your favor. If you word it right and post it right, imaging right, and all that.
I'm a very big believer in preparing for luck. It's acknowledging that there are things beyond our control, but the more that you can position yourself to be ready to receive that influx of interest, whatever the circumstances may be, the better off you are for it. Our last question for today comes from Becky Whiting, who asks, local and regional community support is vital for any of these operations to succeed. Developing cooperative events and operations are one way that a preservation operation can do this. I would think that increasing public awareness of the good that these operations do for their areas is one thing that would be of help. How can operations such as the ones you are featuring work together as well as individually to increase their presence and impact on their communities across the nation as a whole in terms of preservation? Hal, let's start with you.
I think that's a great question. It's being a part of the community is huge. I said before, it can't be just about you. It's got to be, why are we here? What are we doing for our community? What are we doing for our neighborhood? What are we doing for the businesses and the people that support us? How do we give back? So we try to structure, all of our events using local business to really find ways to incorporate the other businesses, be able to tag them in your posts, be able to, make everybody else feel like they're a part of it. So that's a big part of it, and finding ways to give back to the community. Through the Boy Scouts, through other non-for-profits around here, just ways that you can turn around and use your success to promote other businesses or charities or other events or other places so that they can be successful. One thing that we do that's very successful and is our way of giving back directly to the community in town is on all of our scenic trains, we do a 50-50 raffle. And we go through the train, we sell 50-50 tickets, and we do the 50-50 raffle, and we give that money back to the community. So that goes to our local firehouse, it goes to our local EMS, it goes to the preschool down the street, it goes to the community cupboard, it goes to all these non-for-profits and these organizations that are crying out for help, during tough times. And that's an easy way that we can give back to the community and be an active part of what's going on around here. The other thing too is, railroads, you can't be shy about promoting other railroads. We'd love to promote our other railroads, other scenic lines, whether they're 50 miles down or across the country. It's important that if we see something they're doing that's great, hey, tell them that, go and visit them, go and support them. We like to go down and visit the Cooperstown and Charlotte Valley. Go to other places, go see their operations, see what they're doing well, and support them. And it's, if they have a great post, we don't mind posting another railroad's, post on our page and saying, hey, this railroad's just an hour from us. Be sure to go check them out. They do a great job. So, share your success with other railroads. Let folks say, hey, oh, we had a great time on this railroad. Let's go check out this place. So I think that's real important that, railroads cooperate and share their success with other railroads that, may not have, had an event that got posted really well, or may not have the same marketing success that you have, or necessarily the volunteers or staff to be able to get their media out. There's no reason that we can't, help others. And we love to take our staff and do an outing and go visit another railroad and just to, kind of, spread, see what they're doing and just support them. It's all about supporting others. And that's really the key to this, is that the more we support others in the preservation and the other tourism railroads, collectively will be, successful. So it's really not just about you. It's really about how you can support and help others as well in this industry now.
I am a big supporter of the community aspect of it all. One of the things, because I just moved to Maryland about a month ago to start with the railroad, I had no idea what was around here. No idea what's up the road for me here in Frostburg, where people can go on a layover, what are the business hours and things of that nature. And so what I started doing is, as I see posts, I made sure the railroad follows all the other local businesses on our social media, especially on Instagram, and everything is linked. So if I share someone else's post on Instagram as a story, it goes to our Facebook page as well. And if you look at the railroad stories any given day, it's about half trains and half local businesses. And sometimes that's a cupcake at a local bakery, a cute dog at the pet store in Frostburg here, or a glass of beer at a brewery down in Cumberland. But 90% of the people that followed us didn't know the brewery was up the road from the depot in Cumberland because they're brand new. But now and they're in a cool building, and they're walking distance from the station. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to help you guys out to get people down there so they have something to do. And what you got to think about is they might be coming to ride your train for a few hours, but they're spending the night here. They're going to restaurants. They're doing other stuff in the community that will make or break the entire rest of their stay, vacation, or even their day trip. And you got to help them make sure they have a good trip. And in return, those people will realize the impact you have on the community, because now other local businesses know where the people are coming from. And they're like, hey, very much like, want to help the railroad out because they're sending businesses to our way. And one of the things is, so those railroads that might not have the best local government or local community support, people that might want to put a trail here and get rid of this, your community support will have your back and make or break it. Look at the Roaring Camp and the Santa Cruz issue just happening last year, where someone wanted to almost do away with all the tracks into Felton, and the community had their back to the point. I had a few friends who were engineers there, and I was out there visiting the railroad last summer, riding in the cab, and he goes, well, everyone waves to us more than ever now because they realize how much impact we have on the community after everyone stood up for you guys or stood up for the railroad. We realized how much impact we have, and they realize how much impact they have. And so now everyone stops and waves to the train. Where before it was just, hey, here comes the train rolling down the street to the boardwalk again, and all that at Roaring Camp. And so your community is vital to all that. And even the railroad community, if someone goes to one of our other railroads and has a bad experience, what's the chances that person's going to come back and ride a different train? If someone has a bad experience at this place, they're probably not going to look for another train ride. And so you got to make sure your customer experience, and don't take it with like a grain of salt when you get a bad apple, because you're going to get them now and then. But make sure your customer experience is up to par with everyone else around you, because they will either find out another ride similar to the ones they really enjoyed, or they won't come to any of them because they had a bad experience at one. And that's part of sharing other railroad stuff, helping each other out, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, community is very important.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Eric put very, very well. I mean, it's critical to have that local support, because if there's a hiccup in your operation, let's just say a piece of machinery goes down that you don't have the money to fix, or potential trackage rights issues might come up. And there's an article that says this railroad operation might be shutting down. You don't want the public to say, oh, that's too bad. You want them to rally and say, well, what can we do about this? So that's why we are already putting in the work now to really start those connections and make those form those partnerships. So when we are operational, we can automatically reach out to whichever group and say, hey, what can we do to help promote your cause? I mean, we're very fortunate to be in a city like Nashville that has two professional sporting teams. Like we have the Tennessee Titans and the Nashville Predators Hockey League. And each one has their own nonprofit arm that they help, with community events and efforts. And so we've been in contact with them about, hey, here's who we are, here's what we're doing. We'll be online in a few years. Just let us know how we can help, even now. And the Predators Foundation has already given us at least 2 grants to go towards our educational programming. So, you really want to continue and to form those partnerships, those relationships. One thing that kind of came to mind was last week, I'm a part of a Facebook group called I Remember Nashville When. It's kind of like a nostalgic, here's an old photo of a building that's no longer there. And someone posted a photo of where the pavilion, where the steam locomotive used to be located in Centennial Park. And said, and the post was, hey, does anyone else miss the train that used to be here? Man, I really miss it. why did they take it out of here? Like, who took it out? And so, as the communications manager, I felt very disheartened. Like, well, I guess I didn't do my job very well. Also, we didn't look around very well because there's a clear sign that says where the locomotive went and who we are. But anyway, so I was getting ready to, do the whole spiel, and here's the website. And then I clicked on the comments, and so many people kind of, essentially came to our rescue to say, oh no, it's being restored. It's coming back to life. Here's the website, learn more. Here's how you can donate. And then the original poster, replied to these other comments, oh, this is fantastic. I had no idea. So you already have that crowdsourcing, essentially kind of doing the good work for you. So again, like, the groups that just kind of like to keep to themselves, that's one way to go about it. But again, it's really about making those community ties, because, again, if something happens, and the government is able to step in, your local council member isn't going to listen to Joe Railfan, out in Kentucky, but he is going to listen to one of his constituents that, really enjoys riding this train and has brought people in from out of states for that tourism dollars, that goes toward that help, fund this operation and go towards the local economy.
I'm just going to jump in there one more time, and, when we started this a year and a half ago, it was an uphill battle. We had to, a new operator coming in. What are they going to do differently? Why is the train better than making this a bike trail? There's already been 2 railroads, tear out the tracks, make it a trail. So we had to fight that right off the rip. And, we were new to the community and we didn't know anyone here in town. And so we had to really kind of prove ourselves to the local businesses and to the locals here in the neighborhoods. And, it was pretty effective pretty quick when the businesses could see, people coming in and the parking lots being full every weekend. And when they really started to notice that, hey, the train comes in at 1:00, oh geez, our restaurant is full at 1:30, and they're telling you that they have to add extra staff. The ice cream shop down the street is packed after the train comes in. So when they communicate that back to, they're like, oh, what's your schedule? We need to know the schedule so we can add staff, because, the parking, every time the train comes in, we get swamped down here. So when you start seeing that, that's great. When the hardware store, when we first went to see them and, open up an account, it's, you're like, oh, what's this place going to do, And now we're probably one of the biggest customers. I think we're in the hardware store about 6 times a day, So, really supporting your community, and they do support you. And, we had, we had that, one day, where, 5 kind of broke down out there, and we were like, oh geez, we need to line up. We got to get some transportation to get these folks back and do it pretty quickly and effectively. And all the local businesses were already making calls for us. And I barely got down to see what was wrong with the engine yet, and there was already a bus pulling down to pick everybody up. The fire department ran over, grabbed a school bus from the bus garage, and got there in like 20 minutes. It was ridiculous how quick they jumped into action to be like, oh, we got to help the train. So seeing that kind of support is great when the businesses and the community recognizes that you're doing something good and that you're there to help them. So it's nice feeling that when you get to that point that you feel that you're a member of the community. So big part of it.
To add some other things in here, if you're an organization that mainly is volunteer run, I've had to explain to a museum board before, while I was actually running a museum, I've had to explain that, if you're not a part of the community, you're never going to get any new volunteers, because everyone who loves trains, can work on trains, or wants to do stuff with trains is already here doing it, or to somewhere else. If you want more volunteers to help out with different things, you have to look towards your local community, and you have to look outside the railroad aspects of our own organization. Do we need people to do landscaping? Do we need people to cut the grass? Do we want people who can repair toilets so that we can have working toilets on the train or in the bathrooms and that stuff? And, the people interested or have the capabilities of working all on all these trains is not what it was 10 years ago. And most of them are already doing something already. So if you want more volunteers and things of that nature, you got to market for volunteers, and you got to make the same aspects as you do to sell tickets. You also got to do to recruit people to be a part of you. And the community plays a huge part in that. Like I said, if a train broke down and the fire department grabs a bus to go rescue people, they're now volunteers for your railroad, helping you create a good experience. And it's that whole community aspect that will do everything for you.
Yeah, and just to bounce off that real quick, if I could, don't be really afraid to go after new or different audiences. Again, we're in Nashville. You can't throw a rock in this city without hitting someone that is involved with the music industry in some capacity. And we've been extremely fortunate to have friends and allies and Grammy Award-winning artists like Marty Stewart and Old Crow Medicine Show do help us out quite a bit. I mean, they did we did a digital fundraiser concert in 2020 when they had nothing else to do because all their concerts had been canceled. And they, came through, and we raised something like $10,000 in 45 minutes through that endeavor. But what was also critical about that whole concert was that we did a Facebook live stream on our page, on the Marty Stewart page, and the Old Crow Medicine Show page. And they're far bigger engagement audiences than what we have. And the amount of, donations from new people, people who, added their email address to be part of the contact list. I mean, it really was a mini explosion after that event. And I mean, we've had, I think, at least 2 or 3 people from, the posts that they've done on their pages about our effort, come out and volunteer because we had no idea. I heard about it on the Marty Stewart page. So, I mean, it's one of those, sadly, I wish all railroad organizations had the amount of musicians that we have in the, greater area. But, it's one of those, don't be afraid to think outside the box and what audience might be a rail fan or interested in learning more about rail preservation, but not necessarily know that they want to learn more about it just yet. So history pages, again, like nostalgic pages, like anything that, that can really harken back to this is a piece of history that we are bringing back to life, and you can help us do that.
All good pieces of advice, and all coming back to this idea that recognizing what your community can bring to you along with what you can bring to your community is so valuable. Building those connections and not making assumptions that just because they're this thing, we're assuming they can't help us or they wouldn't have interest in us. Don't make that assumption, because you wouldn't want them to make assumptions about your organization and what you can and can't do for them either. Always good to bridge those communications. Thank you guys for joining us, Joey, Eric, and Hal, for this wonderful conversation. I hope that those of you listening along were taking some good notes once again, because boy, I've got a lot of mental notes to go through in my own head after this. Thank you so much for your participation in this.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, guys, for your conversation.
Thank you. Had a great time. Enjoyed it. And great stuff talked about here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And now, the question of the day.
Your question of the day for this episode is, when have you donated to a cause or visited a tourist railroad or museum specifically due to the marketing? Let me know on the roundhousepodcast.com. Links to social media are there. You might not know this, but we've been doing this podcast for over 8 years now. We passed that milestone in February of 2023. And that means you've got 129 other episodes you can check out if you're new to this show. It's great to have you on board. Remember that the Roundhouse is our house.